The cruelest thing my father ever did saved my life. I didn't learn that until 6 days after he died. By then, I had spent 20 years hating him, 20 years believing he abandoned me. 20 years replaying a single word over and over in my head. Go, just go. No explanation, no hug. No goodbye. I was 11 years old, standing in a gravel driveway with a duffel bag hanging from my shoulder while my aunt's headlights cut through the darkness. My mother stood on the porch with her arms folded. My father stood beside the truck with his back turned. I remember waiting for him to look at me. Waiting for him to change his mind, waiting for somebody to tell me this was all a mistake. Instead, my mother looked me straight in the eyes and said something that shaped the next 20 years of my life. He doesn't want you, Willa. I looked at my father. He never turned around, never defended me. Never said she was lying. The screen door slammed behind me. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes, and the last word my father ever spoke to me was one sharp command. Go. So I did, for 20 years. I left Nebraska and built a life 3 states away. A good life. A respectable life. The kind of life people point at and call successful. I became a large animal veterinarian outside Bozeman, Montana. I delivered cabs in blizzards. Treated horses worth more than most houses. Worked 18-hour days. Bought my own home. Paid every bill myself. Needed nobody. That last part mattered most. Because when your own parents convince you you're disposable, self-reliance stops being a virtue. It becomes a survival strategy. I learned to be useful. Useful people get kept around. Useful people have value. Wanted, that's different. Wanted is dangerous. Wanted means trusting somebody not to leave. I never got very good at that. The night everything changed, I was on a beach. My Aunt Ruth had practically dragged me there. First vacation in 9 years. According to her, that was either dedication to my career or a diagnosable personality disorder, probably both. The Outer Banks were crowded with families. Children running through waves, parents laughing. The kind of scenes that always made me feel like I was watching life through a window instead of living it. I was sitting alone in the sand watching the sunset when my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. Probably another emergency call from a rancher. Another difficult birth. Another animal in trouble. The phone buzzed again, then a third time. Annoyed, I picked it up. Unknown number, 3 words. Fly home immediately. I frowned. A second message appeared. Don't tell your parents. My stomach tightened. Parents, I almost laughed. The people who sent me away stopped being parents a long time ago. Then the third message arrived. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. It's about your father. Your mother and Roy cannot know you're coming. Roy, nobody outside the family knew about Roy. My uncle, my mother's brother. The man who always made every room colder when he walked into it. The man who scared me long before I understood why. I stared at the screen. The ocean roared behind me. Children laughed somewhere down the beach. But suddenly, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. I typed one question. Who is this? The reply came instantly. Someone who promised your father I'd call when the time came. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. For 20 years, nobody had ever mentioned my father. Not once. Not a birthday card. Not a phone call. Not a letter. Nothing. Then another message appeared. If you want the truth about why he sent you away, get on a plane tonight. That did it? An hour later, I was packing. 2 hours later, I was sitting in an airport. And 6 hours later, I was flying toward the one place I'd sworn never to return. Nebraska, the entire flight. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The night everything started. At 11 years old, I had walked downstairs for a glass of water. The kitchen light was on. My mother sat at the table. Roy sat beside her. Spread across the table were papers. Bank statements, documents, numbers. I didn't understand what I was looking at, but I remember Roy seeing me. I remember the expression on his face changing. Cold, sharp, dangerous, the girl saw, he said. My father had walked in from outside, covered in dust from the fields. The second he heard those words, All the color drained from his face. Nobody explained anything. Nobody answered my questions. By sunrise, my bag was packed. And by sunset, I was gone. For 20 years, I thought it was because they didn't love me. Now, somewhere over Missouri, I was beginning to wonder if something much worse had happened. When my plane landed in Omaha, I expected confusion. Maybe a relative, maybe another anonymous message. Instead, I found 2 county investigators and a lawyer waiting at baggage claim. The lawyer approached immediately. Grey suit, tired eyes, leather folder tucked beneath one arm. Miss Farrell, my pulse quickened. Yes, his face softened, the way people look at you right before they change your life. I'm Tom Beck, he paused, then said the sentence that shattered everything I thought I knew. Your father didn't abandon you. I stared at him. 20 years of anger. 20 years of certainty, 20 years of pain, all colliding with 6 impossible words. He didn't abandon you. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was insane. My father sent me away. Tom nodded slowly. Yes, then what exactly would you call that? The lawyer looked down at the folder in his hands, then back at me. I'd call it the hardest decision he ever made. And that's when he handed me an envelope, cream-colored, worn at the edges. My name written across the front, in my father's handwriting. The handwriting of a man I hadn't spoken to in 20 years. The handwriting of a man who had been dead for 6 days. And before I even opened it. I already knew my entire life had been built on a lie. I stared at the envelope for nearly a full minute before opening it. My father's handwriting covered every inch of the first page. The opening sentence hit harder than anything that came after. Willa, if you're reading this, then I ran out of time. My throat tightened. I kept reading. The letter wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was a confession. 20 years earlier, my grandmother Nadine had begun noticing money disappearing from her accounts. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Every time she questioned it, my mother Brenda and Uncle Roy had an explanation ready. A forgotten bill, a medical expense. A transfer she supposedly approved. But Grandpa didn't believe them. Neither did my father. Then came the night I walked into the kitchen. The night I saw the bank statements. The night Roy looked at me and said, "The girl saw." My father wrote that he understood exactly what those words meant. I had become a problem. A witness, an 11-year-old child who knew something she wasn't supposed to know. And Roy wasn't a man who tolerated loose ends. My father spent months gathering evidence, quietly. Carefully. Without telling anyone, including me. The more he dug, the uglier it became. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Forged signatures. Manipulated accounts, years of theft. Then came the line that made me stop reading. I didn't send you away because I didn't love you. I sent you away because I did. I closed my eyes. 20 years of anger. 20 years of believing I wasn't wanted, gone in a single sentence. The letter continued. He couldn't fight Roy and protect me at the same time. If Roy suspected I knew anything, I would never be safe. So my father made the choice no parent should ever have to make. He became the villain. He let me hate him. Because a daughter who hates her father never comes back home. And a daughter who never comes back home stays alive. By the time I reached the final page, tears were blurring the ink. But there was one final surprise. My father hadn't spent 20 years only building a case. He had spent 20 years building a trap. And my mother was about to walk directly into it. 3 days later, the farmhouse was packed. Neighbors, relatives, church members, everyone had come for the will reading. My mother sat at the front in a black dress, playing the grieving widow. Accepting condolences, receiving sympathy. Enjoying every second of it, she expected to inherit everything. The house, the land, the money, the farm. Roy sat beside her looking equally confident. Neither of them knew I had spent the last 72 hours reading evidence. Neither of them knew investigators were already building criminal cases. Most importantly, neither of them knew the farm was no longer theirs. Tom Beck arrived carrying a thick folder. The room settled. My mother dabbed her eyes dramatically, then she stood. I just want everyone to know how much Glenn loved this family. I nearly laughed. She went on for 5 full minutes. Talking about sacrifice, commitment, loyalty, even mentioning how difficult it had been raising me. According to her version, I'd been a troubled child. A liar, a burden, the reason my father's heart had broken. Every word was a lie, but she didn't know that everyone would soon learn the truth. Finally, she sat down, smiling, certain victory was moments away. Tom Beck opened the folder and began reading. The first few pages were routine. Then came the surprise. On March 4, 2019, Glenn Farrell executed and recorded a transfer on death deed. My mother's smile disappeared. Roy frowned. Tom continued. The Farrell farm and all associated acreage shall transfer upon Glenn Farrell's death to his daughter, Willa Farrell. Silence, absolute silence. Then chaos. What? My mother screamed. Roy jumped to his feet. That's impossible. Tom calmly placed certified copies on the table. Recorded, filed, legal, final. The entire farm belonged to me, not my mother, not Roy. Not Travis, me. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, shock. My mother's face went white. Then red, then white again. She looked like she might collapse. But the real bombshell hadn't arrived yet. Because at that moment, the front door opened, and Detective Pruitt walked inside, along with 2 investigators. Every head turned. My mother froze. Roy looked ready to run. The detective placed several folders on the table. Before anyone leaves, she said calmly, there are additional matters regarding the estate of Nadine Farrell. The room fell silent. Again, the investigators began distributing copies. Bank records, transfers, withdrawals, evidence. Years and years of evidence. Then Detective Pruitt spoke the words nobody expected. Based on the findings of our investigation, we believe over $480,000 was improperly removed from Nadine Farrell's accounts. A collective gasp swept the room. My mother looked sick. Roy looked terrified. The detective wasn't finished. Several witnesses have also come forward regarding financial exploitation and document fraud. Roy suddenly stood. I'm leaving. One investigator stepped into his path. No, you're not. For the first time in 20 years. I watched Roy lose control, the man who had terrified everyone. The man who thought he owned the family. The man who believed fear made him powerful. Was shaking, actually shaking. Then something happened that nobody expected. Travis stood up. My brother, the golden child, the favorite. The son who inherited everything. He looked directly at our mother and said quietly, was any of it true? The room froze. What? She snapped. About Willa? Silence. Did she ever steal anything? My mother couldn't answer. Did she ever lie? Still nothing. Travis looked around the room. At the neighbors, the relatives, the pastor, then at me. And finally spoke the truth. Nobody else had the courage to say, you made us hate her. The silence afterward felt endless. Because everyone knew he was right. 6 months later, the criminal investigation became public. Roy was charged. My mother wasn't arrested, but spent the next year fighting lawsuits and investigations. Most of the money was never recovered, but enough was. Enough to restore part of my grandmother's estate. Enough to prove the truth. Enough to destroy the lies. As for the farm. I kept it, not because I wanted the land, but because my father had spent 20 years protecting it for me. One evening, nearly a year after everything happened, I stood in the same field where he had worked his entire life. The sunset painted the sky gold, the wind moved through the alfalfa. And for the first time, I understood what that final word had really meant, go. Not because he didn't want me. Because he wanted me alive, because he wanted me safe. Because he loved me enough to let me hate him. Most people spend their lives hoping their parents love them. Mine loved me so fiercely that he was willing to become the villain in my story. And standing there on 400 acres he had saved for me. I finally forgave him, then I unfolded the last page of his letter one more time. At the bottom was a single handwritten sentence, "Come home when it's safe, sweetheart." For 20 years, I thought he had sent me away. The truth was much harder. He had been waiting for me to come back.